I want to recognize someone who helped get PCCA started. Without her, we may not be sitting here tonight. Her name was Betty Rudicelli. Betty was a charter member of PCCA and the first executive director of the organization. She held that position from 1983 to 1998 for almost 15 years. I never had the pleasure of meeting Betty, but I'm told that she was passionate about art and PCCA and that she directed the organization with integrity, vision, and energy, which is something we share, as all of you know. Her family is also with us tonight. Her daughter Megan, granddaughter, sorry, and her partner Tom, son Russ, and her other son Keith, and Keith's partner Kathy. Sadly, Betty recently passed. However, through the generosity of her family and good friends, Janet and Mark Davidson, a portrait was commissioned of Betty and can now be viewed as you enter the gallery. So this is an installation that will be here for all of our exhibitions. So we want to remember Betty and thank, this is a token of our appreciation for all that she's done. So without any further ado, I want to move on to the gallery talk, and I want to introduce Jen Creech, who is the head of our exhibitions here and who hung this beautiful show and worked with all the artists to make this happen. So she's going to start with the gallery talk.
So I did want to thank everyone again. We have so many wonderful artists under this PCCA roof who submitted pieces, and so many of you were able to get works into the show. So I really want to make sure everybody has been recognized. Like, your efforts and your skills are very, very well seen. So I did just want to start off the questions with some light stuff. So I'll just kind of work down the table if that's okay with you guys. So if everyone could just introduce themselves for the people who maybe don't know you. Say where you're from and maybe let everyone know which piece or pieces is yours in the show.
I'm Leslie Mervold. I am a graphic design major at Oakland University right now. My pieces are up along the wall there, those four there. And I am from Oakland Township.
I'm Ann Stars. My husband and I live in Lake Orion. I take watercolors over here once a week. And my painting is a watercolor of abandoned tractor. Taking watercolor classes is my time to be creative and to relax and to learn.
My name is David Prescott. I live in Rochester here. I'm a product designer at Chrysler, which kind of combines art and engineering. My piece is the Cadillac, right over there on the wall, the rusting Cadillac that possibly should be abandoned like your tractor from the shape that it was in. I'm taking classes, watercolor classes here. Shelley is my teacher right now. I just started teaching. I'm teaching intro to printmaking and intro to pen and ink. Oh, and I was educated at Wayne State.
I am Richard Wojciechowski. I am very happily retired. And I live with my wife, we live in Addison Township. And I have two paintings here. One is the cougar on the leather. That is a acrylic. And then the one, there's a landscaping couple doors down from there. That's an oil landscaping. I have been coming here for a couple of years, taking the Thursday morning classes with Charles. It's been a wonderful experience, and I'm extremely happy.
My name is Shelley Malik Vitale, and I'm a fine arts person. Sometimes I've done millions of different jobs, and I actually started teaching here. I just started back up again, but I started here how old are you, Noelle? 20?
Oh, 27.
When she was first born, I knew Betty, very down to earth person. She made art very accessible for everyone and very loving and kind woman. But my husband, I had just given birth to the baby. We're having the wild Monday night watercolor classes at Paint Creek, drinking coffee all night. And he'd be waiting at the door with the baby going, take it. So that's Noelle over there. So I left art for a while. I mean, art teaching here for a while. And then they brought me back in. And I'm so happy to be back here. It's such a wonderful organization. Great.
Well, you guys kind of touched on my next question. For those of you that are students, how long have you been taking classes with PCCA, and what is it about those classes that kind of keeps you coming back?
I've been coming here now for 7 years. Prior to that, my husband and I lived in Florida for almost 30 years. That's where I got back into art. So when we moved back here, where our family is, I immediately started looking for a place to continue my painting and discovered this wonderful facility. And got started in watercolors, and it's just fascinating. It's constant creative learning. I mean, you turn out one, and you may not turn out a good one for a couple years. No, but it's when I first started watercolor, my thought process is I love bright colors, and I love the real wet look. And so that's what I was trying to accomplish, and discovered that it's not so easy to do that. You have to kind of come in the back door and relearn a lot of stuff. And Shelley's brought that feeling back to me to get into some bigger and brighter stuff.
It always is new again. It's not like Bob Ross with the clouds, you know, and then it's over. It's like, is that all there is to this? Is my bush brush? There's more to it. Yeah, there's always new things to discover.
Absolutely.
I've been taking classes here a couple years. I had a 15-year absence where I did not paint. I was very busy being a single parent. In another lifetime, I painted 6-foot oils at Wayne State. One was so big I wouldn't fit in my car, take it to school. And I lived north of here. I was in the Fenton Art Guild. I was a founding member of the Goodrich Art Guild and was very active in that part of the county, and then got divorced and started a new life as a single dad with no help. And I kept me pretty busy for 15 years. My son's 25 now, and I decided I wanted to start painting again. So this wonderful resource is right here, and I started taking some watercolor classes. And my first efforts, I told the instructor, I whispered to her, okay, when you ask what everybody does, I'm not going to tell you that I have an art degree. I'm going to tell you I'm a plumber.
I've always enjoyed art, but then with the family and a career, I was still able to do a little bit of it, but it was kind of on the back burner. So when I was able to retire, I could get back into it. But there's always something to do, you know, art. No, maybe I better do this housework or gardening or something. So my wife said, well, take the class, because when you have a class, you have a dedicated time. Ha, I've got a class, I've got to do this. But you know, it's like a meditation to me, you know, and I go to the class, and it's like going to a spa. But I have artists. You don't have, you know, people doing massages. You have artists, and you're sitting there, and next thing you know is, how did 3 hours go by so quickly?
Yeah.
And it makes me feel when I go home then I can do things like that too. And I've had the classes for 2 years with Charles, and this helped me to learn new things. You know, I wanted to get back into oil painting. I have never done a landscape before. So I started my landscape there, and he helped me. I have other ideas, you know, of painting on not just canvas, on leather. And between his help and my wife giving me, you know, encouragement, I was able to start doing things and realize how happy I am to do something like this.
All right, so I know, Leslie, you are an assistant instructor here. You helped out with Ceramic Adventures. I can't remember if we have you on the schedule yet for spring term for classes, but I know Miss Shelley here was our featured faculty member for this term. Can you just briefly describe some of the classes that you're teaching and some of the projects that you're working on in there?
Yeah, I teach mostly watercolor right now, but I'll teach, since I'm the newbie back again, I'm teaching a lot of different things. Watercolor is my expertise because I've taken it so many different places, Wayne State, CCS, Henry Ford Community College, and Eastern. And I think when I'm teaching the classes, the biggest thing, a lot of times this is someone's dream. Like you said, life gets in the way, and you have to take care of the practice. My aunt, who's an ex-nun hippie in California, said, sometimes you had to take care of the practicalities of life first. But with that said, most of the new things we ever learned in life were from kindergarten. And we were used to learning new things back then. When you're an adult and you're in a new situation where you're finally doing the thing you want to do, there's a real panic that sets in as far as performance and doing the best you can do. And it's hard being new at something and learning again and figuring it out. So it's a lot of emphasis on technique and medium and style and all that. They learn that really fast. They get it. Now it's the point we have to get the second half of it, which what makes art is an experience. It could be spiritual, but it's also a language. And if you don't have something to say, it's like the difference between reading, if you're reading a novel and reading the phone book. You have to have something that you're bringing to the table that's your life experience. And then there's layer upon layer upon layer of new things to discover in art and relearning how to experience that. And people ask me, how can you tell if a painting's a good painting? Well, if you can't stare at it for more than 5 minutes without ripping your hair out or being bored out of your mind, it's probably not great. When you go to the DIA or see the masters, you're always coming back to see something you're finding something new in it. And it's exciting. And there's paintings you buy at the furniture stores, and there's the Thomas Kincaids, and there's the Bob Ross, and you're gonna flatline at a certain point there because there's way more to it.
Cool. Well, I feel like a lot of you have kind of talked, or at least briefly mentioned your process for the piece that's here. Leslie, since you have work that is not in a medium that we currently offer, can you kind of describe your process for creating all these little digital flowers?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm majoring in graphic design, so I'm mainly behind the computer, but I was homeschooled when I was younger, so we have a lot of books on plants and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of used one of those books as reference to kind of look at to make my pieces. I don't know, graphic design is one of my passions, and I think it is definitely a different medium. I used to do a lot of fine arts. I was really into sketching and painting and anything along those lines, but I think I really found my niche with, being behind the computer now. It's I like to do both. You can kind of mix both of them in together, so.
Would anybody else like to talk a little bit further in depth about creating a piece that's here on display?
I don't think there's anything scarier than looking at a white sheet of paper that you're about to paint on. And I don't use a lot of detail to get started because I've discovered that I frequently just get lost when I have too many lines. So I try shapes and I paint light. Just put a nice light glaze and kind of block things in. And once I have that done, then I feel, now I can put more into it. But it's exciting. But
you can definitely see, at least I can see getting to review all of the submissions. People who have been taking classes here a little bit longer, next to submissions from the teachers who kind of led the class, you can see the influences there. For those of you that are students, are there any big tips and tricks that you feel like you can attribute to one teacher that you see yourself replicating, or maybe in the references that you choose, things that you paint?
I learn things from the students. They're always teaching me lots. I've learned a lot from Anne and a lot from you, David, a lot.
I've learned a lot from Charles, and he comes around and he's got this very casual way of talking to you, and he can give you the ideas and almost make you feel like it's your idea. And he kind of helps them mold. But I also get a lot of inspiration from the fellow students.
Yes.
Because I like to walk around and look at their paintings and, you know, see how they do things. I mean, to me, that, wow, this is something that I may not have ever thought of. Or look at how you're doing this. How are you doing this? Or they come around and look and see what you're doing, you know. And I think that that's a big part of it, you know. But I think inspiration in life. You know, I've been blessed in my job. I was a veterinarian for 40 years. And as a veterinarian, you know, I had my own practice, but I was able to handle everything from as small as hummingbirds to as big as polar bears. And I did spend a fair amount of time with one cougar in particular. And I would spend my lunch times, about 6 months, just sitting next to her. She was in her large area, and just talking to her. You know, I didn't want to make her a pet or anything, but it's just talking real quiet. And she got very comfortable with me, and she'd look at me, and I still remember those eyes. And if I moved, her head wouldn't move, but her eyes would. And so that kind of inspired me with my painting. Whatever happened, I needed to get those eyes. And that reminds me of her.
Anyone else?
My teachers, Stephanie before Shelley and now Shelley, have been terrific in challenging me, almost like I dare you to try blank, you know, whatever.
I love hearing that.
They've both been terrific in that, you know, kind of this, aha, I dare you to try, oh, real, okay, challenge on. My job, I mentioned, I'm a product designer. Back in, when I started this, it was on a drafting board. And a lot of my artwork goes back to the technicality of straight edges and compasses and drafting tools. And I still use all those things to create a lot of my art, because a lot of it is straight lines and it's very, very highly technical. And I spent a lot of time trying to get looser and trying to get looser. And my teachers, and among other people, have said, you know, you're really good at being technical, maybe you should just go with that. So some of the pieces, it's almost like, it almost feels like getting into an addiction or something, but the pieces seems to work out, so.
And now he's doing bricks. And there's
Each
so
individual.
and it's like a mantra. It's definitely a religious experience. It's that's what I mean by bringing yourself to the table. It's he's like, that's the message right there, and it's the look, the surface of it, and you could stare at these little bricks for hours and never get bored with them. Never. It's just, that's real art.
Something that I like to do for each gallery talk is kind of end my session of questions with, for the people that are here and maybe haven't started taking classes yet, or maybe they're just nervous to have their artwork on display in a setting very public, like a classroom where critique can happen, or in an exhibition. What advice or piece of advice could you give to them to kind of just take that next step?
I think that honestly, the only thing that you should fear is not, you know, like trying the experience, because then you might be missing out on something that you absolutely love. So don't be afraid to fail, because you're going to be missing out truly on something that you might find that, you know, you might enjoy doing so much. So don't be afraid to show anyone, if it's even, you know, like your animal at first, and then, you know, like one of your good friends, or maybe a stranger. Just slowly, if you can't do it all at once, just progressively do it, because I was like that too. I would literally paint over my paintings, or I would shred it. I'd throw it away, and it's like now I've learned that even though it is bad art, if that's what you would want to call it, I still keep it just to reference, like, you know, I've grown a lot, and, you know, everyone starts somewhere, so just don't be afraid to just try it. And if it's not perfect, that's okay. Maybe try a different medium. So don't be afraid.
And I don't think it's really, a failure is a learning experience.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best thing, and a wise professor once told me when I was in school, he says, you'll be going into practice because you're practicing. And that's the same with art. It's your practice of art because you're learning. And anything you do, whether you consider it a success or not, you're learning. So it's a success in life.
And the great thing about art is there's always like room to keep learning too, and that's
Yeah.
what's so exciting about it. It's like, it's almost like there's never an end to it, which some people might find is kind of scary, but it's like actually really exciting to see that there's just all these opportunities to try.
And I would advise try not to put too much thought into what it's going to look like at the end. I still struggle with that. I have in my mind, I'm very visual, I have in my mind what this is going to look like when it's all done. If it looks like something different, well, it didn't look like what I thought it was going to look like, therefore wrap fish with it and get rid of it. No, that's not correct at all. It just didn't come out the way I envisioned.
That's so true.
Have fewer, especially with watercolor. Watercolor has a mind of its own. Oil you can paint over, you can scrape off. Watercolor, you're stuck with it.
Well, sometimes you have to use a Mr. Clean.
Or a knife.
This is something new.
Yeah, or a knife. But I
And just
think,
try it. Just go for it. Just try it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid.
I think a hard thing often to get over is when you submit a piece and it's rejected. And that can really put you in the dumps. You think, oh, I'm just not good enough. And it takes a while to work through that, but eventually you get a little harder skin. So they just don't know any better.
There you go.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Plus, you can always repurpose what you did. I had some early
Absolutely.
watercolors I did not like. I was not happy with them.
Flip
I
it over.
cut them into strips and wove them together, and it became modern art. And I love
There
it.
you go.
Jenny, I'd like to say something about Chris Shady's abstract class. I've only started painting 5 years ago, and I have no fear of a white canvas. Chris creates an environment in her class that says anything is possible, and that just gives you the confidence to go at it. And like someone said, paint it out or pitch it out if it's not something that you enjoy. But for me, it's really the process. The process is liberating. And I don't know if I would have learned that without Chris's guidance.
Yeah, and in my classes, I highly encourage suffering, and I want you to, if you're crying, then I'm like, all right, good. I do teach start to finish and the whole process. So when you're teaching start to finish, sometimes in the beginning it's all light and the white paper's beautiful. It's all light and lovely. And then in the middle, sometimes you lose it. It's like, where did it go? It's got like a mind of its own. And then you move through to the end, push it all the way through to the end. So.
Shelley is great for that. She'll come by and it's like, well, how are you doing? Well, I'm suffering for my craft tonight. It's
suffering
like, yep,
for your craft.
okay, work through the suffering and do your penance. And
But then it's all the bliss right after that. After you regroup, isn't it a wonderful feeling? Yeah.
Well, that is the end of my questions. If anybody attending has any questions for these wonderful artists who are so kind enough to donate some of their time, or if any of our other students have any little comments that they'd like to make, maybe in regards to the successes they're experiencing in their classes, or maybe that their instructors are passing down to them to try new things, I would love to hear that.
I retired in 1990, and when I went to my retirement party, I told people there I was going to start oil painting. So I did. I started in 1990, 1991, and one of the first things I did was a little pumpkin on a canvas about that big, black background with a pumpkin. Well, now I'm working on a 36 by 48 lighthouse.
Wow.
Well, I quit painting for about 5 or 6 years one time, but I finally got back to it, and I love it.
Awesome. That's great. When you started painting here, was that your first
Yeah,
class?
Totally Shapiro is my instructor now. I love it.
I have a comment here. I wanted, in answer to the thought about, by the way, I'm Phil Doolittle, and that's my painting right above your head there. But in answer to the thought about being afraid of a white piece of paper, I'll tell you what is much scarier. And that is a painting that is 95% finished, and you have to put something, some detail in that goes over what's already there. And that, you know, you can't ruin a white sheet of paper because you can always get another one. But if you ruin something that you put hours and hours in, that's very scary. But you got to do it and get it done.
Forward, yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.